My name is Rachel. When my husband left for abroad, he entrusted me with the responsibility of his 15-year-old sister. Soon after, I married her off to a poor old man and told my husband she had been married into a wealthy family. He was very happy to hear this. When I learned he was returning, I told the servants not to let my sister-in-law, Natasha, into the house because I didn't want her showing up in tattered clothes and creating a scene. That night, when my husband Bruce returned, he said he brought a special gift for me. I was thrilled, but when I opened it, I screamed and ran away. As Bruce was leaving for abroad, he had looked at me with those same eyes that once meant everything to me. There was only one worry in his eyes: Natasha, the little girl he had raised after their parents' death. He had said to me, "She is your responsibility now, be her mother and father in my absence." I had nodded with a few tears in my eyes, pretending to take on the duty sincerely, but I had other intentions. At first, Natasha helped me in the kitchen, asked questions, and tried to assist, but she gradually became a burden. When she asked me to let her talk to Bruce about her studies, I laughed it off and said learning household chores was more important. I began treating her coldly, giving her leftover food while everyone else had fresh meals. When she insisted on going to school, I told her firmly that I was in charge now. One day, I ordered the maid to teach Natasha all the household chores, saying that learning them was part of her upbringing. Natasha became silent over time, speaking only when necessary. One night, I found her crying with Bruce's photo in her hands and scolded her harshly. Despite this, she continued helping me quietly. One day, a nosy neighbor, Mrs. Sylvia, suggested marrying Natasha to an old widower who had a house and car. I agreed silently, already having made up my mind. The next day, I told Natasha about the marriage proposal and called it a surprise from Bruce. When she asked if I had informed Bruce, I lied and said he would be happy. Natasha, trusting me, simply said, "If you think it's right, then okay." I began wedding preparations the very next day. Neither had I invited any relatives, nor did I care about the neighbors. Mrs. Sylvia brought the priest, and I got Natasha ready for the wedding. I told her to keep her face covered with a veil and not to lift it in front of anyone, saying it was for her own good. That day, her lips were sealed, and confusion filled her eyes, but she didn't question me. The ceremony was so simple, it felt like a business deal. When the old man extended his hand, Natasha hesitated and tried to pull hers back, but I pressed her shoulder and told her this was her fate, and she should be grateful she was getting married with dignity. The wedding was completed, and within an hour, preparations to send her off began. As I packed her belongings, she sat silently watching me, then softly said, "Rachel, please let me talk to Bruce once, just once. He'll be happy to hear about my wedding." I interrupted her, saying I'd tell him myself and that it wasn't the right time to talk. I assured her he'd call tomorrow and bless her. She didn't argue, just lowered her head. As she was getting into the car, she dialed Bruce's number, but I snatched the phone and said, "You still don't understand, this is your new life now. Forget the past. Whatever you got in your brother's love is over." She was stunned, silent, and then the door closed, and she left quietly. 2 days later, the old man's daughter came to me and complained that Natasha was too young, she didn't know how to cook or even speak up. I laughed and said all girls are like this at first, she'll learn. In my heart, I hoped she'd settle there and never return. I even blocked her number. When Mrs. Sylvia asked if Natasha had any objections, I said not at all, she was very happy, and even if she wasn't, what did it matter to me? My responsibility was over. I called Bruce the next day and happily told him that Natasha got a good marriage proposal, and I arranged her wedding with a very respectable family. He was delighted and said he could never repay me for what I'd done for his sister in his absence. I tried to find comfort in my lies, but deep down, I felt an unsettling guilt as if I'd done something terribly wrong that couldn't be undone. That afternoon, I got a video call from an international number. My heart raced. I forced a calm smile, but my mind was restless. Bruce cheerfully asked how I was and if everything was fine. I nodded, and then he asked about Natasha, if she was happy at her in-laws. I paused for a second, then smiled and said, "Don't worry, she's in a great place, very wealthy family with honor and riches. She prays for you every day and takes your name fondly." Bruce closed his eyes and sighed in relief. After the call, I opened my laptop to seal every door of the truth and began crafting a complete lie. I downloaded photos of rich girls from various websites, some attending functions, others giving university lectures, holding flowers or wearing shawls, and edited Natasha's face onto them. I created a fake social media profile in her name, with captions like "My brother's dreams have come true" or "won an award for social work," and posted the pictures. Within an hour, a completely fake life had gone online. The next day, I showed Bruce the profile during a video call. He was stunned and said, "That's my sister." I said seriously, "Yes, time has changed. She's transformed. Her husband supports her a lot. Look, her photo even appeared in a newspaper." Bruce was thrilled and saved the screenshots. That evening, another relative saw the photos and called me, asking for a similar match for his daughter, requesting background details of Natasha's husband. I laughed confidently and said, "She lives in New York now with a well-educated, respectable family who runs a big business." I even created a fake profile for Natasha's husband, showing expensive cars, watches, and branded clothes. I made a fake interview of Natasha talking about women's empowerment using a cheap video editing app. I started spreading the story in the neighborhood, whispering to women that my sister-in-law's husband was a big businessman and that she now lived in London. I instructed the servants to say she was married into a modern family and that she occasionally called but was very busy. Meanwhile, I closed all doors to Natasha's real situation. Her old phone was already destroyed, and if any message came through another source, I immediately blocked the number. One day, Mrs. Sylvia came and said she heard Natasha didn't speak anymore, just sat quietly in a corner of the roof, didn't eat, and didn't respond. I shrugged and said, "Girls are like that in the beginning. A couple of slaps will set her straight." That evening, Bruce called again and said, "I wish I could see those photos myself. I want to video call Natasha." I quickly replied, "She's at a workshop right now and doesn't have her phone with her. As soon as she gets home, I'll let her talk to you," I had told my husband before hanging up the phone. Right after, I quickly created a fake post showing Natasha at an international workshop, using photos from Google, claiming she was setting up the next event for her social work. By then, my fear of the truth had faded. I was convinced I had erased every trace. My husband Bruce, the relatives, the neighbors, everyone was in my control. That afternoon, while I was looking at new curtains in my room, there was a loud knock at the door. The servant said a girl was outside, drenched and dressed in torn clothes, not saying a word. I asked in shock, "What's her name?" He replied, "Looks like Natasha, ma'am, but can't be sure." I came out, and it was Natasha, no scarf around her neck, muddy clothes, bare feet, and bruises on her arms like someone had beaten her. She stood silently at the door with her head lowered. Inside, I clenched my teeth and signaled the servant to keep the door shut. I told him if she made noise, yell at her that there's no place for her here. She sat on the ground without a word. It started to rain. I peeked through the window. She was sitting still, resting her head on her lap, like her body was present but her soul had left. I returned to my room, turned on the TV, switched to a serial, increased the volume, and tried to stay busy. In the evening, a neighborhood woman knocked and said, "Your sister-in-law Natasha is sitting at your door and you're not letting her in. People are talking." I firmly replied, "She's no longer my sister-in-law. She's married now, her husband's problem, not mine." That rainy night, Natasha stayed outside, completely soaked, silent, not knocking or saying a word. The servant warned, "Ma'am, if Natasha dies here, there'll be trouble. Should I at least give her some tea?" I snapped, "She's no longer ours. If she lives, she'll leave on her own." At night, I peeked again. She was curled up, leaning against the wall, eyes closed, shivering. I drew the curtain, turned off the light, and went to sleep. Next morning, she was gone. The servant said she left quietly before sunrise. I sighed in relief, then texted her husband, "Handle your wife. If she comes back, I'll call the police." No drama at my door. That afternoon, her husband came, asking if she had shown up. I said from behind the door, "Yes, she came 2 days ago. I sent her away. This isn't her home." He stood quietly, then left. That evening, Shilpa called and said, "Heard your sister-in-law Natasha ran back." I coldly replied, "No, she tried to run back. We sent her back to her husband." Shilpa chuckled, "Girls these days neither understand their place nor fate." Later, at the market, an old woman asked, "Where's that young girl who used to live with you? Such a sweet child." I simply replied, "God blessed her. She's happy in her new home." That night, lying in bed, I looked outside and memories came flooding back. Her drenched body, bleeding feet, and silent sitting haunted me like a movie. I turned away, switched off the light, and thought, whatever happened, happened. She gave up. I only shut the door. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang. A new number. Thinking it was Bruce calling from abroad, I picked up. But it was Natasha. Her weak, trembling voice said, "Sister-in-law, it's me. Please let me talk to Bruce once. I want to see him before I die." My breath stopped for a moment. But I quickly composed myself and said, "You no longer deserve to speak to him. Bruce means nothing to you now. You've received what fate gave you. Try coming here again, and I'll hand you over to the police. I swear it. Don't call again." Silence followed. Then a soft voice, "Please, just once." I cut the call and blocked the number. Her voice echoed in the darkness. I buried my face in the pillow as if nothing had happened. Next morning, I ordered the servant, "If that girl is ever seen near this house, drive her away. She no longer belongs here." The servant looked at me curiously, then nodded. I added, "If she tries to talk to anyone, inform me immediately." He quietly left. The very next afternoon, Bruce called, sounding excited. "My leave's approved. I'm coming next month." I smiled and said, "That's great news. We're all waiting." He asked again, "Why have you never let me talk to my sister? She never calls." I quickly smiled and lied, "Oh, she's always busy, workshops, social work, her husband, sometimes even I get her messages days later. You'll see everything yourself when you're here." He went quiet, then said, "Strange. She used to fall asleep in my arms every night as a kid. Now she's so distant." I quickly changed the topic and said, "Your sister isn't a child anymore. She's a responsible woman now. With time, everything changes." He didn't respond. As I hung up the phone, I said I'd have his room cleaned and ready for his arrival. That evening, I reminded the staff again, if even Natasha's shadow falls on this house, everyone's getting fired. No one should feel pity for that girl. 2 days later, a neighborhood woman said someone saw Natasha at a city NGO, distributing food, teaching underprivileged kids. She looked different, but still recognizable. I chose silence, simply saying we no longer have any ties to her. Around that time, I got a message from an unknown number. I want to see Bruce once before I die. I deleted it without opening. Then I shut my phone off until the next day. I kept sending Bruce fake photos, the same old fabricated award functions. He was always proud, saying how proud he was of his sister. Meanwhile, stories of Natasha slowly began surfacing around the NGO. Shilpa told me Natasha teaches kids for free, brings clothes and food for the poor. I laughed it off, thinking it was all an act to rebuild her reputation after leaving in disgrace. That night, when everyone was asleep, I opened my phone gallery and stared at old photos of Natasha, smiling, playing with Bruce. I shut the photo and pushed the memories away. Her fate and path were now separate. The next day, Bruce called again asking if I had her number. I told him she had changed her number and her in-laws didn't like her being on the phone much. After that call, I decided to erase her entirely from our lives. Let the NGO and sympathy revive her soul, but not at my doorstep. Meanwhile, reality unfolded elsewhere. One chilly December evening, Bruce had just left his factory when he heard a familiar voice call his name. It was Naksh, an old childhood friend. They hugged, laughed, and sat at a nearby cafe. While catching up, Naksh shared that he recently saw a girl teaching slum kids at a food distribution camp in a remote part of their hometown, a frail, quiet girl who looked exactly like Bruce's sister, Natasha. Bruce was stunned and asked if he was sure. Naksh said he tried talking to her, but she only said, "I have no ties with anyone anymore." Her eyes told the rest. Bruce asked for all the details, where, when, if she was alone. Naksh described the tree, the hut, the kids with worn-out notebooks, and Natasha wrapped in a torn shawl, her face marked with bruises. That night Bruce couldn't sleep. Memories of little Natasha running around the kitchen, calling out brother played in his head, but were now replaced by the image of a bruised girl in a slum. The next day, Bruce video called me, putting on a fake smile. I responded cheerfully. Then he asked seriously, "Richa, where is Natasha?" I was briefly nervous but quickly smiled and said she was doing well, busy with social work, her husband, important people. He said he'd be shocked if all that were true. I changed the subject. Later, Bruce asked Naksh for proof, photos, location. Naksh sent his friend to the spot. The next day, Bruce received the images, the tree, the slum, and Natasha. He saved them, torn between belief and doubt. That day, he applied for leave and started planning his travel. One question haunted him: what really happened to his sister? Is my sister really the same girl I think she is, or is what I've been shown all along the real truth? Bruce called and asked, "If I come, will Natasha meet me?" I laughed and said, "Of course. There's a surprise waiting for you too. Natasha and her husband have prepared a gift just for you. You'll be so happy when you see everything." After ending the call, Bruce made a list, questions, doubts, and answers whose time had finally come. This return was going to change everything. When he gave me his arrival date, my heart started pounding in my chest. I couldn't sleep at night but kept everything looking normal. The house was cleaned, curtains and bedsheets replaced, and his room redecorated. I ordered fresh, expensive flowers and had his favorite food prepared. I instructed the servants strictly, the boss is coming, everything must be perfect. But the truth was, I feared the doorbell. I even called an old servant who knew the neighborhood and told him, if Natasha is seen nearby, inform me immediately. He nodded, and I added, if she dares show up, humiliate her and send her away, my honor is at stake. That evening in the kitchen, the servant told me a woman wearing an NGO badge in ragged clothes was seen looking at our house, saying nothing. I ordered, if she shows up again, yell at her to leave, she has no shame. Meanwhile, Natasha was working at the NGO, where a lawyer told her she could take legal action for what had happened. She showed him a photo of her forced marriage to the old man and said this was her only proof. The NGO started taking her to events where she shared her story, inspiring and shocking other girls. One reporter asked to record an interview, saying her story could give hope to many. Natasha agreed, she knew it was time to reveal the truth. That video would later go viral, exposing my years of lies. While I shopped for new clothes and perfume for Bruce and redecorated every corner to prove what a perfect wife I was, I overheard a call from Natasha's lawyer, saying they needed Bruce to testify, he was the key witness. I threatened the servant not to speak of it, then called Bruce saying I had a surprise. He said, I'm about to find out that surprise myself. His tone was strange, like he already knew something, but I acted normal. Natasha submitted her statement in court, and a conference was held where reporters asked her, what if your brother finds out everything? Natasha said, I just want to look into his eyes once and see if he felt my pain. I grew paranoid. Every moment felt like she might show up at our door. I locked every entrance and checked the camera recordings to make sure Bruce wouldn't find out. But the truth wasn't just coming, it was unstoppable. When the bell rang, I checked myself in the mirror one last time, put on perfume, adjusted my clothes, and opened the door. Bruce walked in, same posture, same demeanor, but with a silence that unsettled me. I smiled and said, finally, you're here. You kept us waiting so long. He stayed quiet, took off his shoes, and went straight inside. I brought him tea, but he only said, I'm tired. We'll talk in the morning. He didn't even eat dinner. The next morning at the breakfast table, I placed a cup of tea in front of him with trembling hands. Without looking at me, he said, sit down. I need to talk to you. I sat, and he placed a thick file on the table and played a video on his phone. Natasha's voice filled the room, brother, if you can hear me, please see me once. Listen to me once. Before I die, I want to meet you. My breath stopped. I reached to turn off the phone, but he pushed my hand away and said, no, you need to see this. Everything you've hidden for years is now before me. With a trembling voice I said, it's all lies, Bruce. These NGO people don't know anything. He laughed and said, just keep your voice down. I've already spoken to the head of the NGO. They gave me the full report, and you're mentioned in every part. Your shadow is in every line. I didn't look at the file, just stared at my hands. He continued, do you know when I first saw that video, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought it was a trap, a setup by some enemy. But then I read her letter. I heard her voice, I felt her silence. You broke my trust, and you did it with a smile. As I tried to justify myself one last time, Bruce cut me off and said the situation doesn't matter anymore. Be quiet, he shouted, because now I don't even trust your words. He accused me of ruining an innocent life for my own convenience, and all I ever did was show him a picture to pacify him. I cried and said I never intended to hurt her, but he shouted that the day I sold her off, it wasn't just her body that was sold, it was her soul that shattered. I took away her brother, her home, her dignity. He asked if I really thought sweet words would keep deceiving him forever. Tears ran down my cheeks as I grabbed his feet and begged Bruce to give me one chance to make it right. He said, "No, Rachel. You had many chances. When she called, when she came to the door, when she stood soaked in the rain, you shut the door every time. And today, that same door is shut on you." His words made me scream. I told him I was regretting everything, dying inside, but as he turned to leave, he paused and said, "You erased the difference between life and death the day you handed her to that old man. This is no longer the time for regret, it's time for justice." Just then, the servant came in and said, "Sir, there are people outside to see you. They're from the NGO, and a reporter is with them." I was shocked. Bruce said, "These are the people who will bring your truth to the world. I'm not standing with you, Rachel. I'm standing against you." My voice trembled as I asked if he was going to shame me in front of everyone. He replied, "You created this. You will now face only what you built." The door opened, and there they were, with a camera, files, and a small step stool, bringing with them the truth I had tried to bury. Bruce looked at me one last time and said, "Now you'll face your truth. I'm leaving, with Natasha, who is no longer just my sister but also my daughter." The door shut, and I sat on the floor, clutching the file. For the first time, I realized that curtains don't just cover lies, they cover character too. And today, that curtain had been lifted. Chairs were set up in the hall, and I was confused about what was happening. At first, I thought maybe Natasha was ready to forgive, but then the servant told me Bruce had invited the entire neighborhood, relatives, and household staff that evening. Panic set in. My husband had left me alone. That evening, guests began to arrive: Bruce's uncles, aunts, neighborhood figures like Mrs. Shilpa, and others I had ignored for years. There was an eerie interest on everyone's faces. The atmosphere was heavy. Bruce entered with Natasha, the little girl I had once betrayed, now a composed woman with visible scars I had left. She asked everyone to sit. I stood in the corner, sweating. Bruce looked around and said, "Before I announce a decision, you need to hear a story." He played the same video he had shown me before, the cries, the silences, the wounds. When it ended, silence filled the room. Neighborhood women gasped and said, "Oh God, that's Natasha's sister-in-law." Bruce said, "Yes, she is the one I entrusted my sister to. And she's the one who betrayed that trust in my absence." His relatives looked at me in disbelief. His uncle asked, "Is this true, Rachel? How could you do this?" I opened my mouth but no words came. Bruce placed the file in front of everyone and said, "This is the official NGO investigation report, the lawyer's statement, and everything I've seen with my own eyes." People came forward, flipping through pages, nodding, sighing. Someone said, "A woman like her doesn't deserve to be called a mother." A maid added, "We're ashamed to have worked for you." I stepped back, leaning against the wall. Bruce shouted, "I'm here for justice. Natasha is with me now, and I declare that from this day forward, this woman is no longer a part of my life." Pointing at me, he said, "The one who broke my trust, who destroyed my sister's innocence, no longer belongs in my house." The crowd's anger was clear. Women said, "Even a stray dog wouldn't deal with someone like her." Another voice added, "People like her destroy orphans for their own comfort." Bruce held Natasha close, placed his hand on her head, and said, "You're no longer my sister, you're my daughter now. I've decided to give you a new life." He pulled out an envelope and threw it at me. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was divorce papers. My world collapsed. But I knew I had made a mistake so big, I now had to live alone. I didn't clap, but silence filled every moment on my face. Natasha stood calmly, but her tears testified to her triumph. I sat on the ground, paralyzed. No one came forward. No one offered comfort or water. I overheard someone say, she should be quietly kicked out of town. Another said, there should be legal action. This is no small crime. By evening, everyone had left. Bruce told me to pack my things and instructed the staff, she's no longer the lady of this house. The respect we gave, she threw it away. I had nothing left to say. I looked down. I heard only that Natasha would now live in this house and I could never take her place. At the door, Bruce looked at me one last time and said, go, walk the path you chose for yourself. The doors of my house were now closed for you forever. The door shut, and I stepped out with a new identity, stripped of dignity and entering the alley of disgrace. That day, there was a fair in our city with a grand program attended by important people. Everyone was waiting for someone who would become the talk of the town. Natasha, the girl whose silence was once buried behind a closed door, was about to take the stage. As her name was called, applause echoed. She walked slowly to the mic, calm on her face and confidence in her presence. She began softly, I never imagined I'd stand here one day. It wasn't love, but betrayal that gave me strength. The moments when my voice was silenced were the ones that built my identity. In the audience, a young girl teared up, later telling Natasha that her story gave her courage to reclaim her life. Natasha was no longer just a member of an NGO, she was now a symbol. Her story was honored on major TV channels and went viral on social media. One senior anchor once asked her why she chose forgiveness after such deep betrayal and pain. With a gentle smile, she replied, if I had chosen revenge, I wouldn't have found peace. I forgave and freed myself. I lost a home but gained a world. That same year, another NGO honored her with the Daughter of Courage Award. In that event, she said, my silence was used against me, now, my voice is my strongest weapon. She opened a small school for girls, teaching them not only academics but also legal rights and self-worth. One day, a mother brought her daughter to Natasha and said, I want her to be like you. Natasha would often lecture at the school, reminding girls that their bodies and voices belong only to them. One evening, while Natasha worked in her office, Bruce entered carrying a photo frame of their childhood. He said he found it in an old box and thought Natasha should have it. Natasha softly said, I remember everything, Bruce. Just not with the same eyes that once failed to see betrayal. Bruce was proud of her and once told her, I called you sister, but you've become more than a daughter. Eventually, Natasha's story spread far and wide. She was no longer just a person, but an inspiration. The girl who was once sold had risen strong enough to stop others from being sold. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit rented room, I sat by the window with an empty teacup, staring at the door. There was no knock, no voice. This room was now my world, every wall echoing the past I tried to bury. One day, a neighbor shouted to her daughter, close the door. And suddenly, I heard that haunting voice, sister-in-law, please let me speak to Bruce just once. I pressed my hands to my ears, eyes shut, whispering that it was just a hallucination. But the mind, heart, and conscience told different stories. I thought of calling Bruce many times, but then remembered that home, that relationship, that respect were gone. One day, I saw a small newspaper ad, New Light NGO, a safe place for vulnerable girls. I knew Natasha was there, but my feet refused to move. I had once closed that door myself, how could I return? Days passed. No one came. New women, new voices, new streets arrived in the neighborhood. But my soul still carried the truth. Each night before sleep, that one voice echoed, "Please, just once." One night, I woke up screaming in my sleep, crying, "I'll let you talk to him." I was drenched in sweat, breathless, alone. I realized no one would ever knock again. The next door that opens would likely be the final one. Daylight now stung my eyes, and nights became heavy with unseen tears. And so, the woman who once had everything but understood nothing, ended up buried alone with her echoes in a dark room. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated.